I wanted to welcome everybody, and so I'm just going to start sharing my slides. I'm Catherine Trusser from Common Cause, Ohio. Before we go to the slides, I just want to make sure that we introduce the Common Cause team here. Mia Lewis, say hello.
Hello. Nice
And
to see you all this morning.
you can say a few more words.
That's all right. I'm good.
And Kelly.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kelly Dufour, the Voting and Elections Manager here in Columbus. Thanks for joining today.
Well, I'm glad we're all together, and I am going to start sharing my screen. So as you can see, we are here for Coffee with Common Cause. I don't know how many of you have some tea or some coffee right near you, but this close to the election, I start to get a little bit tired. We are only 39 days until the election, and so we have been doing a lot of work, just to get ready for the election. This is, it's so exciting that we have, the Citizens Not Politicians Amendment on the ballot. This time last year, we were really getting excited about signature collection. We were really beginning, really beginning the process. And so then we're also, going to be talking about voting and election protection, social media and disinformation, and judge the ads, which I mentioned last time as we had this animated video coming out, and we'll have an opportunity to show that to you. And then I just thought, it would be just nice to have an opportunity to talk with you all. And first of all, I thought I'd show you a few pictures here, just to give you an idea. We've been in the midst of distributing yard signs and bumper stickers and flyers and all sorts of materials. And that it just takes so many of us to get out there and have conversations. And we want to make sure that you have what you need so that you can have those conversations with your friends and neighbors. If you want to go canvassing, if you want to get out there and talk to a bunch of folks, that you are able to do that. I also wanted to highlight, it's fun to do these events. I'd mentioned as people were entering, that we were doing these fair districts with our union friends meetings all over the state, and that they end up being, being a lot of fun. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to Mia to tell us a little bit about what's going on and what's happening with the ballot language.
Yes, well, it's you can there's no rest for the weary. It's one way of looking at it. So we've been charging at this, and we've had so many volunteers collecting signatures, doing all the things, and it feels like we know this is going to be an effective and meaningful amendment to our Constitution that will really change how redistricting is done and take the power away from politicians. And we know that because the politicians all of a sudden have gone into overdrive trying to fight it every inch of the way. And one of the ways that they've fought it is with misleading ballot language. And I think you guys all know about that the ballot language now literally says that gerrymandering is required. That means the amendment stays the same. That's important to remember. The amendment stays the same, but that when folks go in to vote, the kind of summary language about the issue that they see will say that this issue that the amendment requires gerrymandering, and that it removes the anti-gerrymandering protections put into the Constitution in 2015 and 2018 that were passed by over 70% of Ohio voters. And excuse my French, but the chutzpah of the people who ignored that language and passed, unconstitutional maps 7 times that were struck down, the chutzpah of them to go and say, oh gosh, it's going to take away those protections. It's really extraordinary. Of course, this was challenged. It went to court, and predominantly the court upheld the really misleading ballot language. They made a few tiny little changes. I thought this was a kind of a hilarious change that they made. In other words, this little bit at the bottom here is saying citizens are not allowed to contact the commission, except of course all the times when they are allowed to contact the commission, which is many. you know, we have that stacked against us. But one thing I think that is in our favor is that they did this last year. They tried to take away our power in August, and people rejected that. And so this is more of the same. And I really feel like Ohioans have woken up to the fact that these career politicians are not interested in being held accountable. They're not interested in a fair system. They're not interested in fair maps, and they'll do anything and say anything to try to keep their power. And if we can kind of keep that in mind and when we're talking about it, and let people know this is more of the same. This is what they tried to do last August, and we didn't fall for it, and we're not going to fall for it this time. I will say though, I don't know if it's time to go to the next slide because I don't remember what's on the next slide, but I will say though that a lot of Ohioans are going to be genuinely confused about this issue because they're going to see yard signs saying vote no to ban gerrymandering. They're going to see flyers and all kinds of things saying, vote no in order to ban gerrymandering. And so you guys are the people who know the deal. You guys are the trusted messengers. You guys are the ones who care about fair representation and care about fair maps. And you guys are the ones that are going to have to be the voice in your community to make sure that people know that it's vote yes on issue 1. And I would honestly say, literally to the point of write an email to all of your friends saying, I know some people are confused about this issue. Please trust the democracy advocates. Please trust the fair districts, activists, and volunteers. Please trust the people who care about fair representation in Ohio. Do not trust the politicians who want to hold on to power. And please vote yes on issue 1. I think that could really make a difference.
Well, and I threw in this slide that really focuses on letters to the editor, because I think one of the, yes, it's so important for us to talk with our friends and our neighbors, distribute flyers, attend events, do what we can to be, put a yard sign, put a yes on issue 1 yard sign in your yard. All of those things are so important, but there are things that we can do right at home. And that is to write a letter to the editor, and make sure that, on social media that you're sharing good information about issue 1, editorials that you see, letters to the editors that you see, any of those kinds of things that will get people thinking more deeply about what is in the amendment and kind of the dirty political tricks that are going on right now. I think it's incredibly painful to think that our chief election official first gerrymandered our voting districts and then gerrymandered the language that we will see when we go to vote. But at the end of the day, what matters is the amendment, and the amendment hasn't changed. And we can get past the bad language as long as we remember to vote yes on issue 1. And I did want to highlight, CJ did his first op-ed in the Dayton Daily newspaper, and I just thought, it's worth that thing of like, even if it's something you've never done, we are here to help. If you need a little encouragement or want us to do a quick review of your letter to the editor, we are here for you. Just please send it to our direction. We'll be sure to do what we can to help you get it placed. And then I wanted to highlight this ad that came out yesterday. And so in this case, you'll have to tell me whether you were able to hear this. This ad features Sam Gresham, who is the chair of Common Cause Ohio. It has Tom Roberts from the NAACP and Petey Talley, who many of you would know. For years, she was with the AFL-CIO, and she's now with the Ohio Unity Coalition.
Only out for themselves.
Politicians want to shut us down. Keep power out of our hands.
They even manipulated the description of issue 1 on the ballot.
Catherine, I think you need to turn it up a bit.
Organizing collaborative and the NAACP.
And voting yes on issue 1.
Don't trust their lies. Let's finally hold politicians accountable.
Join us.
Vote yes on one.
Now, Were you able to hear most of that, or did that not work?
It was hard to hear, but I think if we give folks the link, they'll be able to, we'll pop the link in the chat and they'll be able to see it at home.
All right. Yeah, I think that the thing that I think that was lovely about that is it pushes back on the ballot board misinformation, and it gives a, gives an opportunity to highlight just, just the how long these folks have worked to to ensure that we have accountable government, and it makes that connection with voting districts and accountability at the state house and in Congress, which I really like. So I had mentioned kind of at the top of this, hey, we're doing these different events around the state. There are a couple today. Mia, where are you off to?
I'm heading to Zanesville and then I'm going to go down to Marietta. And it's really, really enjoyable these are really fun events. They are with, our union partners, AFL-CIO and others. And they bring together different segments of the community, all of whom really care about fair maps. So I'm looking forward to today's events.
And then we have, the next one after that is Toledo. And you'll notice we're trying to go to larger cities and some smaller cities. But these are the ones that are coming up. We will send you, when we send the follow-up, we will send you information, and you can RSVP if you're in that neck of the woods. You will notice that some of them do not have the hyperlink. That means that they're still settling on the speakers. As soon as that is established, for folks who live, for example, in Sandusky area, we'll be sending emails out to encourage you to come to that. In the meantime, please save the date and the time, because we'd love to have you there. And then the final one is in Columbus, and that one will be a super duper big one. So even if you are not a Columbus person, please consider coming to that. It's on the 24th.
Catherine, can we look at this question that's in the chat here? As a poll worker, if someone asks me about the issue, will I be able to say that yes, bans it and no, keeps it the same? Catherine, I mean, certainly it's true that that no means there will be no change. Catherine, what's your response?
So one, you're going to really have to listen to what it is that the Board of Elections trains you on. But what you can say is no means no change. And that is something that you can be super clear about. And then you can also encourage if somebody really has questions, you can encourage them, if they have their smartphone with them, they can actually look up Citizens Not Politicians. They can actually look up the amendment.
It's also true that the ballot language that they see on the screen, or it is going to be confusing, but I believe that the actual amendment has to be posted at the polling place. So
That's
they
correct.
can go and look at the actual, I would encourage them to go and look at the actual language in the amendment, and included in the language of the amendment is that gerrymandering is banned. So, that's a little bit of a hint. So I would definitely encourage them to look at the actual ballot language. And I think that this slide here, the thing I mentioned before that I think is really important is for you all to be the trusted messengers for your friends and family, and to honestly just write an email to everyone you know. Or some people have put a little signature, in an email at the end. When it automatically puts a little signature, you can say, I'm voting yes because I don't want politicians rigging the districts anymore, or something like that. So I think that's really something that you all can do that would be so important. But there are other things you can do as well, of course. Find places for our speakers bureau speakers to present. We are always looking for more places to present. There are leaders across the state who are organizing for literature to be distributed at community events, tabling at farmers markets and things like that. And they're collecting commit to vote cards. Finding endorsements. We have some great kind of rally signs that say yes on issue 1. Those are great things for businesses to put up in their windows. If you can, go to your local coffee shop, other places that you frequent, and get them to put up a sign, get them to officially endorse. All of these things, writing letters to the editor, etc. All of these are important. And we're here to help. If you have any questions about any of these, please contact us and we'll be happy to get you set up. Texting campaign. So there is going to be, the league has organized the texting campaign. They already texted 500,000 people, and they're going to start a new round, I believe tomorrow. And when we get the link, hopefully we'll get a link about that today, and we will send it out. Some people have had questions about, well, will they see my phone number? No, they won't. It's kind of like you do it on your computer, and you sign into something, and basically you're just sending messages, but it doesn't come from you. It doesn't come from your phone. And so it's very simple. Sometimes people text back with questions, and then you have to answer those questions, or you have to forward them to someone who can answer the questions. But it is an extremely effective, important thing to do. A lot of people are asking about postcards. We have had some postcards, but honestly, I really feel like having a conversation with your neighbors and having a conversation with your friends and people that you see on a daily or weekly basis is almost more important at this point. Putting a bumper sticker on your car, putting up a yard sign, wearing a shirt, sharing something on social media, those are going to be really, really important things, even more so maybe than a postcard right now.
Well, where do people get things like bumper stickers or,
If
flyers
they've
to hand
been
out?
volunteering before, if they were collecting signatures, they should go to their local leaders and see if they can find one there. Otherwise, I'm going to put my email in the chat. I will do my best to identify someone in your area. If you email me about something like a shirt or a bumper sticker, tell me where you're located, and I'll see if I can find someone locally who can get one to you.
So Melody had a question, which I actually think is worth a little bit of a deeper dive into, which is like, what's a good way to explain gerrymandering?
Right. I would just say gerrymandering is cheating. It's rigging the maps. It's drawing them in a certain way in order to get a beneficial outcome to yourself, your party, incumbent politicians. I just think of it as cheating, as rigging the system, and not allowing a fair maps that actually represent the votes and the people of Ohio. You can think of it as instead of the 50-yard line being drawn at the 50-yard line, having it be moved up to one side in order to benefit one team or the other. So that's, I believe, a fairly simple way of explaining it.
And I always think, we all say it a little bit differently, but I think what Mia's getting at is the cheating element, I think is important. It's an unfair, an unfair advantage, and that the manipulation of those voting districts manipulates our elections, and that we deserve to participate in meaningful elections where there isn't, a hand on the scale. We deserve to actually participate in meaningful elections, and for too long, we've had this kind of cheating. Does anybody else have ways that they talk about gerrymandering that they'd like to highlight? I know y'all are good talkers, so if anybody wants to jump in, please do. And we'll, when we come to the end of this, what we'll do is we'll go off the slideshow, and we'll be able to see one another a little bit more easily.
Allow me to talk for a minute.
All right, John, go for it.
Hi, Catherine. Hi, everybody. I came across a Fox News Dayton channel that had a great explanation on that. They did a little clip that had one of the University of Dayton professors explain what gerrymandering is. I'm about to try to find that link and send it to you. We used it in our fair booth video last week. So if I can find that in the next few minutes, I'll put it up there. It's a nice, quick, not too detailed summary of what gerrymandering is. I will look for that and try to post it in the chat.
Catherine, can I comment on that?
You
Kevin
sure
Cronin
can.
up in Cleveland. I just did a presentation last night even on this sort of subject and explaining what gerrymandering is. But I think it's important to bring it home to the issue of policy. I mean, there's the reason why we have a Senate that is 26-7. It's a reason why the House of Congress in Washington is 15-5. It's because people are taking unfair advantage and they're exploiting voters. And people responded. They shook their head and said that's shameless. I mean, that's the sort of blunt sort of message that I think is really necessary. You have to bring this back to the policy. We are losing on policy because they're cheating us.
I think Kevin is so right. I did a talk using the Baldwin Wallace Pulse poll results on 3 issues: how we teach about race, gun safety, and environment. And on these issues, the Ohio voters were overwhelmingly in favor of the opposite policies that our state legislature is adopting. And that included rural voters. Like an enormous proportion of parents wanted teachers to teach accurately about our racial history in the United States.
I love that there are so many different ways of describing it that people have. Arthur.
Yes, he's had his hand up for a while.
Thank you. I think the very simple statement, the politicians choose the voters, not the voters choose their elected representatives. I think that's the simplest way to say it.
And I see that Mary has her hand up as well, but I agree that we have to bring it to policy. And Catherine always says, rigged districts mean rigged elections, and rigged elections mean rigged policy. The manipulation of district lines is the manipulation of elections. The manipulation of elections is the manipulation of public policy. That's what it is. We don't get the policy that the voters want because they've rigged it. Mary.
I often say that the politicians in power draw the lines in a way that keep getting themselves reelected. So we can't elect new people because they've drawn the line so that the same people keep getting reelected. So that's what I often say.
And that goes to that accountability piece, that whole thing of like, we can't hold these folks accountable because they essentially have made it so they'll just keep getting reelected. Anybody else want to jump in?
I would like to. There we go. I didn't see what I needed to click to participate. The first point that I bring up to people is that we have voted for this in 2015 on the state maps and in 2018 on the federal congressional maps, and that they passed by more than 70% both times. And it's obvious then that Republicans, Democrats, and independents all voted those 2 times, and that the politicians are still playing games with this. And so that hopefully the 3rd time will be the charm, and we will have non-politicians doing the redistricting maps. And that seems to work with people. I would also say that being in Westerville, all the participants could look at their own voting area. Living in Westerville, we have 2 state senators, 2 state representatives, 2 U.S. congressmen. In each case, it's a Republican and a Democrat. So everybody should be able to see that that doesn't work. I mean, who can a town council turn to get assistance from the federal government or the state government when they're represented that way? So in each city, to be represented by one person who can be held accountable for responding. It would seem everybody seems to understand that that is a much better approach, and that currently we have too many cooks in the kitchen.
Mm.
Well, it looks like John found his link. We will include it in the follow-up.
Yeah.
Arthur, you had your hand up again.
Yes, I guess being a cynic, I would have to ask, what makes you think this amendment will make any difference when the others didn't?
Well, it's
Well-
always good to have somebody in the room that's a cynic, right? Okay, so Mia, what makes this time any different?
Well, the problem last time was we left the politicians in charge. We put in a lot of good rules, a lot of good guardrails, but the politicians were in charge and they just ignored all of that. And this time we take the keys away. We take the keys entirely away. Politicians not only aren't in charge, they aren't allowed to be involved at all. And so that makes it very different. So I always say, there are no guarantees. An asteroid could hit us, but people have worked very long and hard to try to find every possible way to block any possible way that there could be malfeasance, so a lot of effort has gone into making sure that this is solid. And so, we know from their response right now that they certainly think it would be effective. We can say that for
Yes.
sure. Yeah.
So that's
I'm
the
going to say goodbye because I'm heading out to Zanesville now, but it's lovely to chat with you all and hear your excellent descriptions of gerrymandering. And I love the fact that you're out there talking about it, and let's go win this.
Thank you, Mia.
Thanks. Bye.
Well, the other thing is Mia is leaving. We should be thinking about next year. We should be thinking about next year when, after we win, we're going to need to implement this. And that means for this to be effective, all of us should be thinking about, do we want to be commissioners? How can we testify? What are the things that we can do so that we can push on the new Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission so that they draw district lines that keep our communities whole, that focus on not benefiting one political party over the other. So sometimes there's that thing like you win and you think it's all over. In this case, we'll win and we'll still have a lot more work to do. And hopefully we can engage all those cynics in coming up with something really good during 2025 so that we finally have fair maps in 2026. And Charlotte, sounds like you'd like to say something.
Oh, I think I'm correct in that not only is it taking the politicians out, but what was the problem with the earlier amendments is that the Supreme Court had no recourse except to send it back to the redistricting commission. And now, if the redistricting commission totally screws it, they can turn to a special master.
And a special master, are essentially special map makers or cartographers that are there to help the Ohio Supreme Court. And that's true. So we won't go through that never-ending cycle of map making where they just keep giving us, gerrymandered maps. And then Ariel, looks like you'd like to say something.
Can you explain a little bit, because given the composition of the Supreme Court, it's very concerning that they have authority over it. So, would they have to pay attention to what the special masters say? I didn't understand that. I was worried about it.
So, clearly it does matter who serves on the Ohio Supreme Court. So I want to make that very clear. There are 3 seats that are up this year. And as we're having conversations about our need to pass issue 1, we should be encouraging people to get out there and to vote for those Supreme Court justices that reflect our values and that did not approve gerrymandered maps, like, so that that's something. So I do think that's important. One of the things I really like about what they're called special masters, but just think about them as cartographers, people who've done this for a long time. when the commission, when the ballot board essentially, and we're talking about the Democrats and Republicans, the Democrats picked the Republican retired judges. The Republicans picked the Democratic retired judges that help with the selection process of the commissioners. They are also tasked with selecting the special masters or the map makers that'll help the Supreme Court. Meaning those map makers will pay attention in the map making the whole way through so that they can aid the Ohio Supreme Court. And one of the things that is very clear is that they will need, whatever kind of court we have, they will need that. It is a challenge, to have an Ohio Supreme Court that is heavily in favor of, it's always hard to think about the best way to say this. So ideological, for example, that they are willing to say that an amendment that clearly says bans gerrymandering, says it requires it. And it's hard to have, it's hard to go through that and say, hey, this is going to work. But we've given, through the amendment, the Ohio Supreme Court the expertise to help and guide them so that the goal will be that, the goal is that they'll have the tools they need and a lot of guardrails so they'll do the right thing. In the meantime, we have 3 races that are up. So let's encourage everybody to focus on electing justices that are focused on voting rights and doing the right by us. And yes, Arthur.
Yes. How do you find out what the judges' stands are? I haven't even heard about the election of judges.
Oh, okay. So the League of Women Voters has lots of good information. If you go to Judicial Votes Count, that's where you can actually read about, basically what the judicial candidates, what the Ohio Supreme Court candidates actually say about themselves. You can also, like in the Judge the Ads.org, you can read about the candidates, and you can also read about like their endorsements, a little bit about how they decided on different cases, including the recent one about the boneless chicken wing one. Many of us will be familiar with that, where the Ohio Supreme Court essentially said that boneless, the majority of the court said that boneless chicken, they should expect bones. It's just a method of cooking. So, one of the ways to think about that is that there are decisions that are fairly easy to understand. There are ones that are more complicated, but that should give you an overview of the different court decisions. The League of Women Voters all of a sudden I'm blanking on this. They're 411, vote 411. You can also get information there. So one of the things that we'll do when we do a follow-up, I'll do a little bit of information about where you can get information about the candidates for Ohio Supreme Court.
Would you give that website again?
So again, vote 411 was the League of Women Voters. The Judicial Votes Count, that's the one that basically you're hearing directly from the justice candidates. You can also look at Judge for Yourself with a 4. So we'll send an email so that you have all that. And then Judge the Ads is the one that Common Cause does that focuses on both the ads that you see, the money behind it, and we also provide some information about the candidates as well.
That would be great about the email because I have a disability, so I have trouble writing stuff down.
Well, you can be super good at writing stuff down, and I was talking too quickly. So we'll make sure we get a good follow-up. Kelly and I'll work on that because, as you know, Mia's on the road today.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's do this. We're going to go back. We just talked about all of this. I'm going to hand this over to Kelly Dufour, who is our voting and elections manager. Kelly, do you want to give an update on what's happening?
Sure, thanks. Again, glad to see everyone on this call. I'm sure you've seen recently how Springfield's in the spotlight, and really it's a sad situation. sad situation that they're dealing with so much, threats and just unrest resulting from really unrelenting disinformation. When you have the Republican governor, Republican mayor who comes out and debunks claims, and then candidates, top candidates are still not backing down on those claims. It's been, it's resulted in a lot of bomb threats. They're stretched, their resources are really stretched thin, and they're just really having a tough time there. So just to let you all know, Common Cause is working with our voting advocate partners to help behind the scenes, make sure we're working with faith partners. We have volunteers that are attending boards of election meetings, just to make sure that we understand what's happening. From that standpoint, we have providing voter support materials and resources, and helping to organize the poll monitors and peacekeepers there. Normally, Clark County is not, is not always in our, really, it's not always on our radar for needing to coordinate and work around. But we've really obviously seen in this area, and then Portage County, there are a few counties that are going to deserve a little bit more attention this time around, just from a pure having poll monitors that we can just track things on the ground, report them if we see issues. And so, we'd really encourage anybody who's interested to help join our poll monitor program, which we can talk about in a second. We're continuing to see attacks on our election system. There is a strong non-citizen voter narrative that, that one party is pushing. They're really trying to manifest that in multiple ways. And unfortunately, our chief elections officer at the Secretary of State continues to really double down on it. So we've seen very few referrals for non-citizens registering. Unfortunately, these get sent to the prosecutors, county prosecutors, review them, and the secretary does not feel like the prosecutors are following up enough. And so, he's pushing to have the attorney general, really investigate. And so it's unfortunate rhetoric. It's poor timing, and, it's just something we're dealing with in this climate. We are continuing to see mass voter challenges still with the Ohio Election Integrity Network. We've seen them in dozen, I think 18 or 19 different counties at this point, and some, hundreds of voters being challenged at a time. And it's really just a strongly orchestrated effort. It's actually happening in many states, many good fight states and swing states that we have just really, we're jockeying for, parties are jockeying for power. And this, unfortunately, is one tactic that a party is using to, try and intimidate voters, really bogs down the boards of elections, unfortunately, and creates a lot of work and unnecessary work, because, the election system here in Ohio does have a process for voter maintenance and has gone through that. But, now we're within the 90-day, well within the 90-day deadline. We're approaching the 30-day deadline, and we're still seeing these challenges. So it's really a strain on the system. Next.
May I
Which
ask
is
a
why.
question?
Oh, sure.
What about the intimidation charges against the Portage County Sheriff?
I'm maybe Catherine knows that. I am not aware that the charges were filed, but I know that the post has been removed. Catherine, do you have details?
So the post has been removed. The sheriff is no longer, the sheriff and the sheriff's department are no longer going to be basically providing security at early vote or during, polling on election day. Beyond that, I don't know if there are additional kind of charges. I think one of the challenges have to do with, like, whenever they come up against the First Amendment, it becomes a little bit complicated. But of course, it clearly is, and it clearly was intimidating. It was clearly genuinely a problem. And so it is something that we need to be following closely. And to be kind of alert to in our own communities, if you don't live in Portage, just to be paying close attention to what it is that our officials are actually saying, because they can get in the way of people feeling safe when it comes time to casting a ballot.
And there are, there are a lot of groups working, particularly with the mass challenges for I'll say a larger goal down the road in terms of, introducing legislation, really doubling down on changing voter registration processes and working through different technology issues in the election systems. And so Portage County Tea Party is one of those organizations that have signed on to a letter demanding some changes in the elections process. So we're not surprised by Portage County information, but it is alarming, and obviously there's no place in elections for that kind of behavior, and so we're doing what we can to support our boards of elections. We're attending as many meetings as we can, and we have volunteers in I think we're in about 15 or 16 different counties that are attending meetings so that we hear directly from the source. This link, the ohiovoterrights.org, I can drop it in here. We have a sign up through the Ohio Voter Rights Coalition, where all the voter advocates are, working together to volunteer and coordinate our poll monitoring and our boards of elections monitoring. We have social media monitoring. And so really, if there's anything that you would like to do with us in a nonpartisan way, really to just help voters, and our 866 our vote hotline, we've seen, I think we've had almost 150 calls on the hotline already, which is quite early for that kind of volume for the calls in Ohio. So, we're really looking into next steps for that. So I don't know if anybody has questions on more of the elections information, but it's an interesting time. It's definitely an interesting time. And, from the meetings I've attended at the boards, these boards of elections are seeing, especially with the mass challenges, are seeing things that they've never dealt with before. From what I've seen, they're going through very deliberately and thoughtfully and taking questions and working through the system. But unfortunately, as technology just continues to advance and, there's more AI generated tools, it's going to make it a little more challenging. I think the poll worker or the boards of elections definitely have their work cut out for them. Catherine, if you could, I think we went backwards.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
So Trevor stopped by with a bunch of materials for Cleveland, which was a good thing.
Nice.
It looks like
Nice.
Michael has his hand up, and I'm going to take care of that.
Yes, can you update us on I guess there was a recent ruling on the finances for the Vote Yes campaign in one of the courts? And then could you also tell us that, are we going to begin to see some mass media? I've seen stuff online, but online you're kind of preaching to the choir. So there'll be stuff on television that will be posted, or there will be commercials, Vote Yes commercials?
So I'm going to defer the legal challenges to Catherine. I know she has a much better grasp on that. In terms of are you talking about the campaign doing commercials? And so, I know the campaign is, go ahead.
I understand that the campaign has like $25 million for this or something like that to be able to use for this campaign. And I've seen the ads online, but I don't see any ads on television. And when you put ads online, you kind of preach to the choir. I'm wondering if they're going to do like advertisement on television to vote yes.
Gotcha.
Okay, so basically the campaign has had a schedule, Michael. And what they started out with are ads, what you would think of as kind of traditional digital ads. And they began yesterday having, let's see, it's Thursday. They began yesterday having ads on television. So the ad that I showed you, I'll show you with the ad that I showed you with Sam Gresham is one that is actually on television. Now they'll be in this is the other thing. They are heavily doing the 3 Cs: Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and then they're also doing Toledo. In other areas, they're not doing as much television. They're relying more on radio. Yes, there'll be some TV, but they'll be relying more on radio.
And Catherine, Michael's other question was about the court ruling on funding for the campaign, the campaign finance.
So I think the one thing that's important to remember is that foreign money was never permitted. So I think it's important to realize that that has always been the case. What made House Bill 1 complicated has to do with the prohibition on contributions from folks that hold green cards. So for organizations, and just start to think about organizations like us, where we have members, but we don't assess whether people are green card holders or whether they're citizens. We needed to essentially create a special account that just was for citizens, but there have been court kind of back and forth. It's not clear what's actually going to happen. We and I think other organizations that are part of the the Citizens Not Politicians campaign have assumed that we need to keep just having just citizen contributions to support us during this time period. What the back and forth about the green card holders in the courts, I'm not thinking about the best way to say this, but what it does mean is that it's not clear what is exactly going to happen. But because they're using a definition that the United States doesn't use, I think, it's likely, and it's hard to know with courts, it's likely that it will not actually go into place. But what is in place is the ability for the Attorney General to investigate. And since, it's been a little bit rough with the Secretary of State, certainly folks have been using their power to make it harder to pass issue 1. It's not clear that the Attorney General could investigate you. Just you could have just a simple, I think they're using foreign money, and you could be investigated. And so organizations are being super duper careful, even though there's this back and forth on green cards. Does that answer your question? All right. Kelly, other things that you wanted to say about election protection or peacekeepers, anything there?
I think we have another slide. Yep. So hopefully everybody knows, but our election protection network at the 866 our vote number, is available to voters as of right now. So folks are answering those calls and taking those calls. You can call or text. So it's another thing you can share with your friends and neighbors to make sure that people know that if they have questions, if they are concerned about something, they can send it to that 866 our vote number. And we deal with that with partners that have a lot of experience and are really well equipped to help answer those questions and get people the right information. We also have, so in addition to poll monitor trainings, which will be starting in October, we also have the opportunity for folks to distribute materials if you're willing to put out election protection signs, or we have little business cards that can be passed out if you're out and about. So we have a sign up, which we will include in our follow-up also, and we would appreciate help there. Again, I mentioned the boards of elections monitoring, and we've really expanded that program this year. We didn't think it was going to be as active since March as it was, but we've been really going strong on that, and it's been very educational. We're learning a lot. We're now in the logic and accuracy testing phase of what the boards are doing, testing the machines, and we will follow that through to certification. So if there's anyone like you who really likes to get deep in the weeds of the nuances of election administration, it's almost, I think it's enjoyable to learn, and I'd be happy to talk to you more about it if that's something you're interested in. I think we have a slide. Yep. And we also have Tiffany on our team who is working on social media monitoring. Obviously, there is so much mis and disinformation out there. It's, you know, really hard to tackle. But one of the techniques is putting out good, sound content with reliable sources like direct Board of Election sources or, you know, voteohio.gov. And so she's hosting posting parties where she can work with folks to share things on your network and work through that. If you want to take a step beyond that and actually help with the identifying and reporting of mis and disinformation, we also have tools that Common Cause, as our organization, is one of our priorities and works through on that end. So again, there will be follow-up links if that's something of interest, something that can be done from home and on your time. And, you know, we just really appreciate your consideration because we know everybody's hands are very full with campaigning also. So we appreciate your help. Oh, Catherine, I think you're muted.
Naturally. It's funny how often, 2024, we've been doing these Zooms for a while and I still end up struggling with muting. I did want to highlight that we had our ad come, our little mini ad. So it is a digital ad, not a TV ad, that came out about basically encouraging people to look thoughtfully at political advertisements. And I just wanted to highlight that the guy who edited the video was really funny about wanting to work off his bad karma because of all of the political advertisements that he had done. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to show you the video. I will stop it and then raise. I'm going to stop it and then raise my sound quite a bit. There we go.
Judge Pat Joyce, radical environmentalist St. Joyce is still moving. Somebody had to actually make this and make a broadcast. What's really going on here? That's all I know. That's not the people, no matter how smart they are.
No audio.
Let's do. Is everyone else having trouble hearing?
Yes.
Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to stop stop that. And we will, I will send you the video. I'm sorry that I put it as loud as I could. And for me, it was deeply unpleasantly loud. So I'll send it to you. One of the things that I think we really struggle with during this time period is the amount of misinformation that is out there. And I wanted to make sure that we were giving people tools so they could look at political ads and be thinking about, okay, what are some of the techniques that are being used, but also thinking about, well, who actually paid for this and what do they want from us? Because there is so much dark money in elections. Well, we are close to 9:30. And, I am so glad we were, able to get together for an hour and chat and talk. And I wanted to give, is there anything that, for example, Kelly, that you wanted to say, or anything that anybody wants to say about, what we're working on?
I wanted to put out there, in case you haven't heard, there was a court case that was won by an individual with a disability, and care providers can now drop off absentee ballots.
Kelly, do you want to walk through how the Secretary of State has handled that when it comes to folks with disabilities and their ballots?
Sure. So yes, thank you for bringing that up. There was a challenge pretty soon after, when there was limitations on who could drop a ballot off for folks, especially folks who wouldn't be able to get there themselves. And so we were pleased to see that the courts overturned that part. Because of that, the secretary has issued some recent directives to try to pay attention to who is dropping off the ballot. And, you know, there will be probably a little bit more scrutiny at the drop boxes, but we want to make sure that everybody's aware that you are able to take a relative's ballot, or, you know, take someone that you are supporting to the drop box. There is now a directive that the boards of elections are directed to have the voter who is dropping off a ballot with somebody else's ballot fill out an attestation form. So they need to attest that they are filling it out for a relative or someone who needs it. The boards of elections that I've monitored recently are, you know, confused with the directives. There's some ambiguity around how that's going to be handled, and they're working to put together plans to make sure that, you know, voters have access and opportunity to use the drop boxes, and they're able to monitor it. So it's not, I mean, again, I feel like the Secretary of State has gone out of his way to make something more complicated for both voters and boards of elections, especially so close to this election season. But, you know, I'm confident that the boards are doing what they can to make sure that, you know, they're being thoughtful about the way that they're going to, you know, deal with their flow, and then, you know, deal with those folks that do have a ballot that they're returning for a relative or someone they're assisting.
I got a question though. All the forms they have to fill out, are they going to be at the drop boxes?
That's a good question. And I would say right now it depends on the county that you live in and how that Board of Elections will be handling it. Technically, the directive or the original directive issued by the secretary said they needed to anybody dropping off additional ballots would need to come into the boards of elections and fill out a form. And so that was highly concerning to a lot of people, defeating the purpose of the drop boxes. He's also called for, you know, his intentions on removing the drop boxes are also, you know, is also floating around. So, you know, we see this as a very political view on Dropbox use, but boards of elections I've recently gone to in Delaware, and I know Franklin's working on it, but in Delaware this past week, they were talking through ways of trying to have people out there assisting at the Dropbox to provide the form that's necessary. You know, there's a lot of question on how any of the voters will even know any of this information. So also the drop boxes are open 24/7 when the boards are not there during a working day. So there's a lot up in the air, and it's just, you know, one more little dagger just to confuse everyone and I think frustrate people during this election season. So I would say if you have questions and you want to be firm in your knowledge of what your county is doing, the best thing to do would be to call your Board of Elections and talk to them ahead of time.
Well, I will also be having a meeting with him in October as a presentation to the disability community.
Oh, great.
So I will get my questions answered.
Yes, thank you so much. I think that's fantastic that you're able to, to help and represent so many folks that need the assistance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, once again, we've hit the end of the road in terms of time. Michael, you have your hand up. Is that intentional or a remnant?
That's intentional. I just had one last question, if I may.
Oh, sure. Go for it.
I saw this issue one again. I saw something briefly online that said that behind the scenes, there are a lot of Republicans who are saying they support issue one because they're tired of kind of being tied to state house power brokers. Is there any truth to that we know of?
So, you know how that goes. Basically folks are not necessarily going to be public about it. The one piece of evidence that I would say is this. The Chamber of Commerce waited until yesterday to come out against issue 1. Meaning this very, these are Republicans that hang out at the State House all the time. Generally speaking, if it was something that they were really, really, really against, they would have weighed in much earlier. It looks to me like there was some back and forth. Now it's really sad that the Chamber of Commerce has come out against it. But the fact that it happened this late in the game actually suggests there's things happening behind the scenes. But once again, it's we're reading tea leaves. There's no one that I would want to out for saying these things. I do know that it's not functional at the State House for, they're very ideologically driven right now, and social issues can get in the way of kind of some of the basic functioning things that folks who are conservatives that are focused on business, that their issues are getting sidelined, and some of the, I don't know, back and forth and some of the kind of intra-party fights also makes it hard to advance agendas, not just for progressives, but also for conservatives or specific kinds of conservatives. All right, well, any other questions? And on that, we have lots to do in the next month. 39 days to go. So please do what you can. Please volunteer. Please consider doing election protection. We all need to be out there talking to people and getting the word out about why gerrymandering is so bad. And I'm so glad that we had more of a visit during this get together. And we will send you a follow-up and hope to see you next month after we win. Thank you, everybody. Have a really good day. Thanks again. Bye.